Hello, it's Karen Burniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is Mod Holiday, and the challenge is to make a Christmas card in non-traditional Christmas colors. And I chose a color scheme that was based on a pretty piece of plaid paper that I had in my stash. So this card uses two of our Christmas tree pop-ups, but instead of using the base that comes with it, I am swapping out for our palm tree pop-up base so that I can have those trees collapse directly forward in a top fold card. To fit two side-by-side trees, I need a large card. I started with a piece of cardstock 8.5 inches wide by 10 inches tall and scored it in the middle for folding. And then to that, I am adding the panels of the plaid paper. The paper is Echo Park from their Witches and Wizards collection, and those panels are 8 inches wide by 4 3/4 inches tall. Okay, so the Christmas tree pop-up comes with its own base, and that is designed for a side fold card. It's a 4-sided base, and it collapses the pop-up diagonally to the back in that side fold card. Now you can absolutely use that base in a top fold card, but it just means that your Christmas tree is going to collapse diagonally forward in that top fold card. So if I wanted two trees side by side in the top fold card, I'd have to have quite a wide card to be able to accommodate that diagonal collapse. So I'm going to switch and use the base that comes with the palm tree pop-up. And it is different because it is a 6-sided base. And so with 6 sides, the trees can actually collapse just directly down forward. So it's really perfect when you want to put two Christmas trees next to each other in a top fold card. So both the palm tree and the Christmas tree bases, though, they are cut in designs. So I need to start by just figuring out what pieces of paper I want to be underneath the trees. And I've chosen the second largest rectangle from our Long Rectangles Crosshatch die set, and I've cut it twice. And then I'm going to line up the edges on the edge of the pattern paper inside the card so that I know how much gap to leave between those two for die cutting the tabs. So leaving a gap between the pieces for the base is the best way to make sure that you can get that card to open up fully flat for display. I did a little math on these rectangles and figured out that if I measure 1.25 inches from either side, I can get the location where I need to line up the nubs of my pop-up base die. Now, if you're not using these rectangles, just figure out where you need to place the bases so that you will get a 4-inch center on the trees. From the palm tree set, I need the die that cuts the tabs and the die that cuts the base. And it's this one that has the nubs that cuts the tabs that I'm going to line up the end of that nub right on my pencil line. So it's centered over the gap with the end of the nub right on the pencil line. And now I just need to run this through my die cutting machine. Okay, so carefully removing the die, you can see it's cut the tabs that will lift up and hold the base. But first I need to get the tabs cut for the other tree. So I'm just going to move the die over and once again make sure that the nub is placed right on that pencil line. So you can use any die cutting machine that can accommodate a wafer thin die. I used my Spellbinders Platinum 6. It does have to be wide enough to put those pieces through, but you can put them through the long way. So you just have to have your regular kind of 6-inch machine. And if you're not using the same rectangles as me, you just need to make sure that when you cut the tabs that they are 4 inches apart on center. Okay, I cut 2 of the palm tree base pieces out of a brown cardstock to be the trunks of the tree. They have 6 fold lines in them, and I always think it's easier to fold towards my thumb the first time. So I just put my thumbnail down into the score lines and then fold them toward me. And then because the pretty side of that cardstock is forward, I'm going to reverse every one of those folds. And you can also check that you folded on the lines by just seeing if the holes line up when you fold between the 2 panels that have holes. So if I fold here, see how everything lines up perfectly? Fold over here, everything lines up perfectly. And then it's that little tapered tab that's going to join the 2 ends of the base together. So a little adhesive on the tapered tab. I'm just going to spread that out a little bit and then get it attached to the other side. Now I'm using my LINECO neutral pH adhesive in my fine tip bottle. It is my favorite. We do sell both of those items on our website. So this is the little 6-sided base that comes included in the palm tree pop-up. And then the 2 solid sides on the base that don't have any holes in them are actually sized to fit perfectly over the tabs that have been cut into the base. So you just have to get that solid section down over that tab and pinch it on. So it's just attached inside there. You can see it's the exact same shape, so it's going to line up perfectly. So the adhesive goes on the outside of the tab, and then just put the base over the top. It's really easy to just get your fingers in there and just pinch it. The base should come all the way to the cardstock at the bottom, so you shouldn't see any tab below the base. And then now that base is attached to the tabs, and I just need to do that again for the other side. So just folding, gluing, and then attaching the solid sides to those tabs. Okay, and then the only other piece that needs to be die cut out of the palm tree is a set of trunks. And so it doesn't matter what color you cut those out of. This is actually just going to be used as a template, and you only need one of them. I'm just going to choose the one that has the slot. And then switching die sets, each tree is going to need a set of the big pieces and then 2 sets of the small pieces. Okay, since I'm using the palm tree base, I need to have tabs at the bottom of my trees. Right now I have holes, and I have holes on the base, so that can't be put together. But I can use the palm tree trunk as a guide to turn the holes that are in the bottom of my Christmas tree into tabs instead. So the openings at the bottom of the palm tree, I just want to line up with the top of the holes in the tree. And feel free to use some temporary tape to hold that palm tree piece over the top of the Christmas tree so that it doesn't move. I didn't tape mine, I'm just holding it so that it won't move, and I'm taking a pencil and tracing those interior parts around the tabs so that they are now drawn in at the base of the Christmas tree. And then I just need to use my scissors to cut on those lines, or essentially on those lines, maybe a little bit outside of them since they're traced on there. Basically, I want a 90-degree cut to make the tab, and then a little bit outside of that, and then at a diagonal. And then what that'll do is it'll create a little small tab at the base of the Christmas tree that can be used with the palm tree base. And this was really only needed because we're trying to swap out the base. So the Christmas tree wasn't designed to use with the palm tree base, and so now we have to make this modification. I don't have to use that palm tree anymore to trace because now I've got one tree done. I can use that as my new template for the other 3 trees. It's really easy just to line those trees up over the top of each other because they're exactly the same shape. So all I have to do is trace those little cutout parts onto each of the tree sections and then use my scissors to add those little cutouts so that I have a tabbed system at the bottom of all 4 of the big trees. Okay, normal assembly now. I'm going to take my big notched tree and slide it through the slotted tree of the same color until the notch in the center is seated in the slot in the center. Then I have to temporarily fold down one of the triangles at the top so that I can push that tree through the slot, and then I unfold the triangle on the other side. So just a typical slot and notch system. We use these a lot on a lot of our dies. Okay, now comes the fiddly part. I've got to get those little tabs that I cut into the bottom of the tree. I have to get one tab through a hole on a base from the outside of the base. So this is fiddly. There's no other way to say it. You just got to kind of wiggle it down in there until you can get a tab through the hole. Sometimes you can get 2 at a time, so I've got the front 2. See, from the outside, those little tabs are now just sitting through the holes in the base. And now I have to work on the back 2. So see, I can bend it out a little bit if that helps to kind of slide the tab so that it's on the outside of the base and then down until it goes through the hole of the base. Okay. And then the last one, once again, I've got to just kind of bend it until I can get it down until it goes through the base. Once it's through the base, now it's seated in there. All right, so that's fiddly, but once you do it, you've done it. Okay, and then I just repeat that exact same process with my other tree to get it into the slots on the other base. Okay, both trees put into the base. I can simulate what that's going to be like in the card by just folding the rectangles on top of each other, and that's going to collapse the trees down, and then when they open, they will pop up. Okay, before I carry on decorating, I want to point something out, and that is because of the nature of how the Christmas tree is, cutting those little tabs, they end up being quite a bit thinner than the substantial ones that are on the palm tree trunk. And I did wonder if maybe they were going to be a little too thin for longevity, but I opened and closed the card several times and it was fine. But then eventually I did manage to work one of those little tabs out of the hole. Since my tree was entirely put together and decorated, I just used a little tool to go in there and work that tab back into the hole. But I was worried about it coming out again. So what I did is I just took a small little strip of the same color cardstock that had tape on the back. And then I just used my little paper piercer to hold it so that I could go in there and basically weave it through the hole so that it would reinforce that little thin tab. And then to really get it to adhere, I just closed the card and gave it a really good press. And I ended up having to do that on a couple of the other tabs as well. And so it got me thinking that a better way to teach this technique would be just to anticipate that that could be a problem and add that reinforcing to the big trees before putting the small trees on, because it'll be a lot easier to do. And the slot that comes out of the middle of the slotted tree is actually the perfect thing to use. So just adding some double-sided tape to the back of that slot that fell out of that big tree, after I've got the big trees attached to the base, using those little small tabs that I cut into them in the same manner, now I can go in and just cut little strips of that slot. It's already self-adhesive because of the tape, and then I can just weave it through the hole and attach it to reinforce all the tabs. And it's just much, much easier to do that before the small trees are put around the outside of the big tree. And there was actually nothing difficult about this except getting the little strips to release from my paper piercer. So maybe a pair of tweezers would have been a better tool. But whatever you've got to be able to just weave those little strips through the holes, then they can stick to those tiny tabs and really reinforce them. And that's needed just because we're robbing the mechanism from one pop-up and trying to use it with a different one. So there may be little alterations like that that will be required. But that little technique is actually also useful for the Christmas tree with the four-sided base it comes with if you've ever weakened the tabs that are in that base to a point where they need to be reinforced. So after reinforcing the big trees, which I didn't do, but I wish I would have, then now it's time to add the small ones. So you can actually chain them together into one chain of 4 small trees, and that way you only have to worry about one set of tabs after attaching them to the trees. So now attaching these, I just choose one side of the big tree. I get the notch in the slot at the bottom. Then I've got to wiggle the 3 branches of the big tree through the slot. I hold the big tree, I hold the top of the slot, and I click it into place. So this only works if you get the slot into the notch at the bottom first. That has to be the first step. So getting in there, getting the big tree into the slot at the bottom, then you've got to wiggle the 3 branches through the slot. Once they're all coming through the slot, you hold the big tree with one hand, you hold the top of the slot with the other, and you pull it onto the notch until it clicks. Okay, now speeding things up for the back two, same exact thing. The notch has to be in the slot at the bottom. Then I get the 3 branches coming through the slot. I hold the big tree, I hold the top of the slot, I click it into place. Okay, and then the last one, again, just getting the notch in the slot at the bottom, pull the tree through the slot until it clicks at the top. So once all 4 of the small trees are attached, then there's a set of tabs on one side that can be used to seal them together. So just a little glue on those tabs and then connect them to the other side. Then I can carefully close the card down and give it a good press. And now I just repeat that process for the second tree. Okay, so now the trees are done and I can attach this inside the card. I can take off that temporary tape that's holding those 2 halves together because I don't need it anymore. And if you recall, I made it really easy on myself because I actually put the gap in between those rectangles such that I could line up the rectangle right with the edge of my pattern paper and get the correct spacing. So just kind of making sure that it's straight and that it's centered and that the edge of that rectangle behind the trees is right along the edge of my pattern paper. And then I think it's easiest to just turn the entire card around to work on the other side. So I just flatten it down and add my strong adhesive. I'm using glue, but you could use a strong tape runner if you prefer. Then I'm going to stretch that across the gap and to the other side, also lined up with the edge of the pattern paper. And then once it's attached, I can give it a good press in the closed position and just make sure that everything is popping up and popping down nicely. There is a 2-part star that comes in the Christmas tree set that fits the top. And I decided I'm going to do that out of a glitter paper, but it is glitter only on one side. And since it is a top fold card, I really wanted it to be glitter on both sides. So what I'm going to do is just glue them back to back, just sandwiched at the top of the tree. Okay, starting with the star that has the notch at the top, there is only one tree that it can attach to, and it's the slotted tree, because you've got to have a space for it to attach. So I just get that attached to the top of the tree, and then I take the exact same one and glue it back to the first one, and it's going to sandwich the tree between the two stars. For the other half of the star, I thought I would try something different, which would be to pre-glue them together, but then not let them seal down where the notches are, so that that can still be sandwiched over the other half of the tree. So then I just have to wiggle the other half of the star through the notch on the first one, and then kind of separate those little notches at the bottom until they can each attach to one half of the other tree. Okay, and then just giving it a close to make sure that it's collapsing down and that it stays within the card. And now I have that three-dimensional star attached to the top of the tree. And then I just need to repeat it for the other tree. Okay, the other star is on, and now I am ready to decorate my trees. One thing you may notice in this technique is that those trees, when they pop up, they aren't that perfectly symmetrical square diamond shape that you're used to seeing with the four-sided base that comes with the Christmas tree pop-up. That's fine. It actually needs to collapse forward, so having them be a little bit elongated horizontally helps that operation. So this is correct. For ornaments on the tree, I just used the circle die that comes with the Christmas tree pop-up. It actually cuts 4 ornaments at a time, and you can double up the paper and get 8 at a time, so it makes for pretty quick work to decorate the tree. To finish out the interior decoration, I used our Merry Christmas and Merry Christmas shadow dies for a greeting, and then also used one of the trims from our Border Blends trims set, and then our Crosshatch labels set as a place to write a personal greeting. The Christmas tree pop-up includes a cardinal, so I cut that out of red glitter paper, one for an interior tree and then one for the front of the card. My favorite way to make card fronts is just to repeat the elements from the inside as a simple lead-in. Here's that green tree that I had started earlier just to show the reinforcing. I decided to finish it out into its own card. So same technique, just using one tree instead of 2. And when you do that, you can get it into an A2 size top fold card. So for mailing these cards, like I said, the smaller one is just a standard A2, so an A2 envelope is all you would need. I don't really have any rhinestones or anything on that one, so it's pretty thin, but it is a little rigid, so it may need the extra ounce stamp. And then on the bigger card, it has rhinestones all over it, all over the trees and the front and everything. So it will fit in an A9 envelope for mailing, but I feel confident that both because of the thickness and the lumpiness and everything, that's going to need some extra postage. Every designer challenge has an associated blog post, so if you're not on the blog already, you will find the link in the description box below. The blog is where you find photographs and supply lists and link to the very talented design team members' cards, as well as information about our Mission Poppable challenge. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBerniston.com, where you can purchase these dies as well as find links to our other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.